Welcome to the Unsidelined Life, the podcast that challenges and encourages women to stop denying themselves a full life and to step boldly into the opportunities God is preparing for you. Join me for raw insights and engaging conversations to guide your journey of self-discovery and pursue the life that God created for you. Welcome to the Unsidelined Life. This is Eileen Noyes, your host. Welcome to my world. I say that because at any moment, the volume level could change. I've given a fair warning to my family, but if you have kids, you just know that anything goes. So I'm just warning you ahead of time. Hopefully all will be well, all will be quiet, but who knows? So I am coming in today with the episode. This one I'm going to name Playbook Strategies. So this is, these are 5 chapters of my book, Sidelined No More. The parallel, I would say, to this book is Rise Up Lady Bellator. So just kind of a little backstory. When I wrote Sidelined No More, God was telling me, this is for the pro athlete wives. This is for you to show them that you understand where they're coming from, that you can relate, that you know their world, that they can trust you, and that they can approach you. And so in doing that, I was obedient. I loved how the book went because honestly, I thought that with what I'd gone through, being in the limelight, being in all that stuff with my ex-NFL spouse, I assumed that my first book would be somewhat of a tell-all, not in a bad way, of like, you know, like my heart behind it was, Lord, I want to share what I've gone through to give you glory. I want to share what I've gone through so that people see that no matter how hard it gets, that God is faithful to get you through. So my heart was to, well, it still could happen. It will, in God's timing, a memoir to show, Lord, these are like people, these are all the things God did when, during the worst of storms. And so anyways, Sidelined No More was that first book. And again, I definitely don't want to say superficial or surface because it's not, but it definitely was very tempered on the intensity of where I would have come from had I written the memoir, had I come full force, hey, this is all the stuff I'd gone through. God knows best. He knew that this was the right thing to do, which thank God right now it's finally getting into the hands of the ones that are closer to the end of their game and their season in NFL, if not hopefully reaching the ones that are actually a part of that world right now. So that's Sidelined No More. And then because of that book, because of the tagline, so it says Sidelined No More, it literally says helping pro athlete wives get out of the shadows and live out their God-given purpose. Well, if you're not a pro athlete wife, you're not going to read the book unless somehow you know me, which was what happened. And when people read my book, it was very encouraging because they were saying, Eileen, it's not just for pro athlete wives. You gotta get this out there. You gotta do something so that people don't just think it's for them, because people will miss out. I mean, even guys were telling me that, which is super encouraging. So God led me to the second book, which is called Rise Up Lady Bellator. Both of them are very similar. However, here I'm thinking I'll just tweak a couple of sentences, tweak a couple of paragraphs just to make it flow, just to make it so that I'm not just talking about or talking to, the pro athlete wives. So here I'm thinking, all right, just a couple of chapters, a couple sentences in each chapter. And as I was going, I was like, okay, this is going to take a little more work. And so chapters started changing, and some chapters were actually completely taken out. God was saying, hey, this totally doesn't apply to women outside of pro sports. So add this chapter, take this out, take these things out. And so it was the same, a lot of the same, but very different. And both books, I'm super proud of both books. I've heard great things. I love how people say it's an easy read, because that's how it should be, that people can really read it, because when it resonates and when it connects, people will literally sit and just go through the whole thing. I know people that have read it more than once. So very, very encouraging. So this episode, a couple things actually before I even say that. Here's the deal. I wasn't planning on doing this episode, but my guest, first time, my guest could not, she had to cancel out. And here's the thing. These are busy moms with lives that can change at the drop of a dime, at the drop of a hat. And so just like her and just like me, it's like, all right, flexibility time. What are we going to do? I got to get an episode in. And so I wanted to make it easy for Pod Up, who has been awesome in getting my episodes together. I wanted to make sure that they have something to work with and that they have ample time. So one, I'm looking forward to having that guest. Her name is Courtney Finley. She will be on soon. She is a former NFL wife. Tomorrow, I get to interview Ginny Peterson. So she is also, she was also part of the Packers quarterback's wife. And so that will be airing pretty soon. Well, obviously after this, but just super excited that I get to have this opportunity to meet with these women. And so in that place of flexibility, it just makes me think about how you have to have flexibility as a mom and how you have to have flexibility in that world. So to me, when I think about being a wife, being a mom, being in that space, because I obviously am talking a lot about NFL and the pro athlete wives, there has to be extreme flexibility in the fact that, you know, a season can, especially right now, a season can end before you hope it does because you lost in playoffs. A season can end because of an injury, because of a cut, because of a trade, because of an end of the whole career. And so there has to be a lot of flexibility that goes on with mom. And so when I say that, I think about how stepping into this entrepreneurship, stepping into all the things I'm doing right now, is thinking that I've been a stay-at-home mom for 20 plus years after being a strength coach for 4 years. That was my only full-time job. There's the lie that why are you doing this? You can't do anything else. Stay home because that's all you're meant to do. And that's a lie from the devil. Yes, absolutely. My first priority, my husband, my kids. But for sure, now as they get older, God is showing me, okay, get out, step out and do these different things. The fact that, you know, I was a stay-at-home mom, didn't know this world of entrepreneurship, but I see how much being a stay-at-home mom has carried over, and that all the things that I've learned and have known in being a stay-at-home wife or stay-at-home mom and wife, it's helped me. It's helped me just, again, in terms of this whole flexibility piece to know, okay, you know what, things shift, things change. We got to go roll with the punches. And there's so many other things when I talk about, you know, especially having 8 kids, no doubt I will have to say it's for sure getting harder as they get older. It is getting way more expensive. So, but anyways, in that process, it's like I'm learning and growing and seeing how all those things I can apply, all those skills that I'm learning, all the things I have to put into practice as a mom, as a wife, they carry over into entrepreneurship and what I'm doing now, the coaching space, the speaking space, learning to have patience through those processes, learning how to juggle things, learning how to push through trials and tribulations, all those things. And so it's come from my experiences as a mom, as a wife. So again, so I'm going to get into, I started last week. The chapter that I had talked about was You Said. And so here, as I'm praying, okay, Lord, my guest can't make it. What do I do? Help me out here. It was interesting because you know this if you've watched previous podcasts, that I always feel like God directs me, God leads me. And so here in this space, and again, this is knowing God and trusting God. It's like, all right, Lord, this was not new to you. This is not a surprise to you. Help me. What am I supposed to talk about? What do I do? And as I'm praying, and again, I talk about these things, I'll be bold to talk about these things that may be, foreign to you, or you not heard about it, or you thought, hey, this is not something that is for the now. one thing that I did do as I'm praying is I was praying in the spirit, going, Lord, okay, this is short notice. I have to do an episode today. What do I talk about? I start praying in the spirit, and immediate was like, talk about the rest of these chapters. These are important. And so the 5 chapters that don't change in the books are the things I'm going to talk about today. So like I said, I talked about one last week. It was in Sidelined more, which I'll be referring to more, is playbook strategy 1, you said. And so in, the other book, in Sidelined no more, because it's geared toward, sports, that theme, I call them playbook strategies. In Rise Up Lady Bellator, which again, introducing Lady Bellator, she is royalty. She is a warrior. She fights in the spirit for her family, her marriage, just knowing that we don't fight against flesh and blood, but principalities and powers. And so in that book, I refer to them as spiritual weapons of warfare, which they are. And so anyways, going back to these 5 chapters, I'm like, okay, let's talk about those. Let's review them. And I have to say this. So as I'm in the car driving to pick up my kids, I'm thinking, okay, what are these playbook strategies again? I know them, but I'm like, which ones did I write about? And I'm thinking, okay, well, there's this one about your promises. There's the other one about forgiveness. There's the other one about our words and how our words are powerful. There's one about being better together. And I was like, what's the other one? What's the other chapter that I'm missing? And I look at, and I think all the chapters, they change in title. Like I said, I've got playbook strategies, and then I've got spiritual weapons of warfare. I think all the chapter names kind of changed, except the one that I forgot. And I know I forgot. It's called Shut Up and Pray. And that has to do with praying for your spouse. And so it was just funny. I giggle because of all the chapters that I forgot, was the one that I need most is to shut up and pray, which I'm doing a whole lot more of. So I just thought that was pretty funny. All right. So review of last week, I had mentioned the chapter, it's You Said, or God's Promises. That's the name in Rise Up Lady Bellator. And so I talk about holding God to his word. God says his word does not return void. There's another one. It's like God is waiting to perform it. Like he's waiting for us to respectfully and in honor and in awe call him out to say, hey, God, you said this. I'm holding you to your promise. And God is like, sweet. She's trusting me. She's putting her faith in me. All right, here we go. And he wants to answer our prayers. And so that's what that last episode was about. Check it out if you're not sure or if you haven't watched it yet. And then the next one, I'll go, I think. So you got my book right here. I got it right here. Yes, the next one, and this will be a little bit of story time too. The next one is Shut Up and Pray. So in this chapter, I talk about as a wife, and as we know, interestingly, I don't know the statistics, but supposedly the average woman says tens of thousands of words per day, and the man says just the thousands, right? I would have to say that in my first marriage, it was totally opposite. I am not the talker. He totally was. I believe that when you're an introvert and when you're with an extrovert and they start talking, you don't put up a fight, and you just for me, I just got quiet. And I'm not even talking about when we're talking to each other. I'm talking about when we're in a crowd. And, he would have started talking. Even if I had something to say, I'd probably just I don't feel like saying it. I don't feel like fighting. I don't feel like raising my voice or just being, loud, or not shouting. But it's just so for an introvert, at least for me, it takes effort to be louder, for sure. It's like putting on makeup. It's naturally I'm quiet, I mumble, but so I do think about speaking and even doing this as kind of putting on different clothes, putting on makeup. This is not me normally. This is me having to enunciate, having to slow down, having to not say, having to, just be more clear with my thoughts, which thank God I'm practicing as I'm doing more speaking, as I'm doing this, gaining confidence, all the things. So I seem to talk more, but I don't think, unless you ask my husband now, I don't think I'm very much of a talker at all. So as I get into this, this chapter, and these are going to be pretty quick, this summary of shut up and pray. As women who seem to talk a lot, and I will have to say, like I said, I forgot in this chapter, is, you know what? Marriage is hard. Marriage is a struggle. Marriage is, there's a proverb, I think. It's a scripture. And it says, where there's no oxen, the barn or wherever they live, it's clean. Basically saying, if you don't have the oxen, there's no crap. If you're going to have a marriage, there's going to be crap. There's going to be junk that you're going to have to deal with. So there's no perfect, blissful marriage. It just doesn't work like that. And as two growing people who are growing in the Lord, growing in their personalities, growing in different, just having different personalities, different likes, dislikes, it's just part of marriage that there's going to be seasons of more strength, times, seasons of, more disconnect. And so that just comes with the territory. And so, as I talk about this one, I know that right now there is a difference for me. I'm going to slow down and I'm going to think about this because, you know what? Again, remarriage is super hard. That's why God says not to divorce. There's a lot of reasons that go into that. And at the same time, thank God for his grace that he knew that this was all no surprise to him. And so I would have to say that in my first marriage, I was on the passive side. My personality is very laid back, that I have mentioned this before, that I'm the type, like, if you want to go eat somewhere, go ahead. I don't care. You really won't hear pushback from me really along any subject or any topic unless I feel super strongly about it. And so in my first marriage, compare, but this is the reality. I'm talking to people who are going to need this information. So in my first marriage, like I said, on the passive side, didn't really, even if I didn't totally agree, it was like, well, he's doing this for the Lord. Okay. So they're just things where, really, I didn't say much over time, especially as things were going in the way that they did. I did have to be vocal. I had to stand my ground. I had to, come to this place of, okay, things are out of order. Things are not good. Things are not as unto the Lord. And so I did have to speak up. And so it was a lot of coming out of my shell in a sense. And it was a lot of just becoming and really anchoring in the Lord of who I'm supposed to be, what I'm supposed to say. And so I had to be more vocal toward the end. And in some ways that caused friction that was never there before. And then, of course, because of that, it seemed that I was more rebellious, and it seemed that I was not submissive according to this teaching that he was following. So, I had to really work through that. I had to really trust that, okay, God, I am, again, like, as I'm being more firm, as I'm being more vocal, at the same time, it's okay, shut up and pray. In that context, I'm talking about the times where I wanted to defend myself. There are times when I knew that he was wrong. And, even so after the fact, when we got divorced, unfortunately, there's a lot of, people talking about me, saying stuff. I just had to shut up and pray. Shut up and pray in the context of, again, not defending myself, letting God be my defense. Yeah, not getting caught up in all that people are saying. And so shut up and pray during that time. It took a different life, I guess, especially toward the end. So here, I go through the divorce. I'm living single mom life. I'm mom and dad. Thank God I had, a covering of people and of church. But, at home, it was me calling the shots. It was me having to seek God's face and asking him, Lord, what do I do? What do I do with the family? Making decisions. What school do they go to? All those things. It was just me and God. So coming into the second marriage, into my marriage with Michael, shut up and pray has taken on a whole different meaning. In the second marriage, you got two people, two divorces. Thank God again with his grace. There's a lot that we are working toward and working through. And it's definitely not easy. And so with this whole thing with shut up and pray, I'm coming into this marriage stronger than I used to be. I'm coming into this marriage like, I'm not going to take crap. That's kind of how I kind of came into this. And through that, through the different dynamics of fighting that we have had, I am definitely not proud of how I have been vocal. I was not like that. I can tell you this much. For the most part, I was not like that the first time around. The second time around, because I was single for so long, because I had this protection of the kids, there's definitely part of me that came bolder, came stronger, and again, not in the best way. So God has been for sure speaking to me in a different way to say, hey, you need to shut up and pray. 3 scriptures that I have to remember, that you have to remember. It's better to live all alone in a rickety shack than to share a castle with a crabby spouse. It says spouse here, but really it does say wife. It's better to live alone in the desert than with a quarrelsome, complaining wife. A quarrelsome wife is as annoying as a constant dripping on a rainy day. Ouch, ouch, and ouch. I definitely would have to say that I've heard this from my husband, that I could be like this. And honestly, I never thought that I was like that until this time around. And, I would for sure have to say, okay, has there been justifications? Yes, of course, in some ways. And at the same time, it's okay, God, these are needs that I have. These are hurts that I have. These are things that need to be addressed. How do I do it where I am not nagging, where I'm not quarreling, where I'm not complaining? How do I do this? Yeah, while getting my point across. And so it's been a journey. And I'll also say this, that it's not just on the woman's end. In my case, there are things that I know, okay, that's not my heart to do this, and that's not my heart to complain. I have to check with God and go, okay, Lord, I said this, I addressed this. Was that okay? Is that complaining? Is that nagging? And sometimes it is not on me. And so to constantly go to God and say, okay, God, I need to address this. Let me do it in the manner that pleases you. And whatever the response is from my spouse, that's between you and him. So it may be, and this is any marriage, it may be that I am coming at things completely the right way, and it may not be received well. That's not necessarily just your fault or always your fault, or being over-responsible. You can't be over-responsible for things that he may not, his own person, he's got issues and junk. So your husband, my husband, may have to work on his own junk to receive what you did in obedience, what you did in a gentle, quiet spirit, what you did right, and he may not receive it necessarily. So that's not your issue. So in this whole thing with the shut up and pray chapter, one thing, so those are the things, is that God showed me this too. There's a scripture that talks about having a gentle, quiet spirit. And it says that a gentle, quiet spirit is precious in the sight of God. And so God brought that to me again, because again, I went from super quiet, pretty passive to feisty Eileen, which if you know me, I'm pretty laid back. I'm not I can get along with almost anybody. I think I do. Yeah, I do. I mean, I just know myself that way. But for sure, a feisty, fiery Eileen has definitely shown up in this marriage. And so God is showing me, Eileen, having a gentle, quiet spirit does not mean that you're only silent and that you don't use your voice. And that was good, because that was a big thing for me as I was working through this. Like, God is saying, you have a voice, you have a voice, you have a voice, because that's what the devil was really trying to do, is shut me up. So again, that's why this chapter has been such a challenge, is, okay, Lord, how do I keep my voice? How do I keep my strength? How do I know that I'm not putting myself in a position where, like, especially dealing with what I dealt with, I am not a doormat. I am not going to be run over. And so, Lord, again, help me to know when it's my place to fight and say, I don't want to say fight, when it's my place to say something, and when it's your place to deal with his heart and you fight for me. And the fight comes through prayer. So it's me learning more and more now. The gentle, quiet spirit is a strategy. It's not, hey, you need to be quiet and you need to have no voice. God is saying that gentle, quiet spirit is a strategy to get what you want, and there's the way that you approach your husband. But even before you approach your husband in what you say, to be quiet, to pray, to be slow to speak, slow to anger, and quick to listen. The Bible says that, but also to pray. I've seen it over and over and over again. And in this, I like to say that I'm smart and that I'm a quick learner. But obviously in this place, God has to show me over and over, hey, you know what, your way is not working. Try my way again and see what happens. And so in this place of shutting up and praying, again, God is showing me, are you going to do it my way or are you going to do it your way? When you do it your way, Eileen, what happens? Pretty much every time it turns into a fight. It turns into him not understanding me. It turns into my words getting not good, worse. And so to, again, go back to this book, go back so that I don't forget, shut up and pray. That is a much needed chapter. That is a much needed tool, weapon of warfare, is to go to God in prayer, and you'll see the fruit of it. I've seen the fruit of it even this past week, being quiet in a way of, Lord, I just rest in you. Lord, I pray differently for my spouse. I pray for him like I pray for myself. I pray against the strongholds in his life. I pray against the junk in his life. I pray against any distractions, weed out any bad company, because bad company corrupts good character. I pray differently for my husband. So instead of going to him and saying, hey, I don't like this, I don't like that, you need to do this more, you need to do that more, you need to hang out with the kids, hey, I need love, all those things, to go to God in prayer brings better results. And not just results of, if you tell a man or you tell someone and they could do it in good intention to want to please you, but if it doesn't come from within, the fruit won't last long. So instead of me saying, hey, I need you to do this, and in him loving me tries to do it, when God gets a hold of his heart and changes him from the inside, then it's different. It shows up differently. It shows up sincerely, and it stays. So again, shut up and pray. Try that. Journal. Instead of saying it to him, say it to God. Journal. Look back after you journal. Look and see God's faithfulness with that. So, and that is shut up and pray. That is playbook strategy number 2. First one, again, as you said. The third playbook strategy, I call it my undercover power. Man, how can I give stories? Again, when I talk about these things and I talk about NFL life, I think this chapter of forgiveness is huge. And so here I'm going to talk to you, woman who is in the pro sports, who is in high profile. I talked to someone else. Actually, I was talking to a pastor's wife, and I was like, oh my gosh, so many similarities. My undercover power. I talk about in the beginning of the chapter, I talk about how my ex, again, all with eyes of compassion. And, like basically before we got married, here is this man who never cheated. He was a faithful guy, it was never an issue for us before marriage and after. Now for me, before I knew Jesus, I was very promiscuous, very, all that, just not good. Definitely not how I am right now. And so when right before we got married, it happened to be on 9/11, the 9/11, when everything happened, everything took place, and it was like the world was going to end, basically. And so what happened, long story short, is a girl that he had known came to his place, and she was trying to, just kind of, actually here, he was trying to tell her about me. So, so here he's all by himself in Green Bay, wanting to just, stay focused on work, get through the day. And this person comes to his place, and, they haven't seen each other in a long time. And here's the crazy part is he has not seen her in a long time. And for some reason, when that morning happened and I wasn't there, I was still in California, still working. There was just this temptation to call her, so out of loneliness, I get it. See, again, I'm coming compassionate. I'm not trying to, I'm not trying to, gossip or whatever. So as he is, so she gets there, and he, it's like, oh my gosh, what are you doing here? Well, then she comes in, and he's trying to tell her about me, and telling her, yeah, we're getting married, all this stuff. Well, and I always look at life as we don't fight against flesh and blood, but principalities and powers. She says, well, if she really loved you, she'd be here right now. And I know it was the enemy, the devil, trying to maneuver his way into convincing him, yeah, she should be here right now. So she tried to do stuff. He came to his senses. Nothing happened physically. So, obviously when he told me about the situation, he was in tears. He was, he just thought, oh my gosh, how are you ever going to forgive me? And, going through that, hearing that, and I knew God had prepared me. It was interesting because I couldn't get a hold of him throughout the day. I was trying to call him, couldn't reach him, ended up going to a prayer meeting, and I called him again. Actually, no, I got home from the prayer meeting, and the voice message is blinking, and I press it, and it's him, and it's the message was him distraught saying, call me right away. I got, I need to talk to you. So he ends up telling me that, this happened, how you're going to forgive me, all these things. And of course I was in tears. I asked what happened. I actually did hang up the phone. I called him back because I knew that God was saying, I think you need to forgive him. So I was obedient. That was my heart. Okay. And I said, this is not about you. This is not about me. God's going to get us through this. And that act of obedience, to not waver, to not, well, God, no, but this hurt. And all the things that I could have fought God on to say, no, that's not right. Or no, that's, I want justice. I just obeyed. And in that obedience to forgive, how much easier it was for me to move forward. It came through that choice of obedience. Even for him, as I forgave him, God spoke volumes. So this whole shut up and pray thing, here I'm shutting up and praying. I'm forgiving him. I'm not going to him and, how dare you do that? You shouldn't have done this and that. Do you know what this did to me? I didn't say any of that. In my choosing to shut up and pray, and then in my choosing to forgive him, my forgiveness spoke volumes to him, that it convicted his heart. It allowed him to see things in a whole different light. And so forgiveness is a choice. It's not an emotion. It is a decision to say, you know what, I'm not going to hold this person hostage, nor am I going to hold myself hostage to revenge or an apology, because sometimes apologies don't come, or they need to know what they did wrong. They need to know how this hurt me. Like all those things that we think have to be there or have to take place before forgiveness. That's not how it works. It is choosing to forgive. And so again, I just talk about that in my book. I talk about different things with that. And then also, again, when it comes to like NFL living, I've had to have that mentality of forgiveness. And again, it went a long way. I'll give you a couple examples when it comes to that world. There was a player, very famous player, and his wife. We go out to eat, and of course, especially in Green Bay, fans are coming up to you, kids are coming up to you. Can you autograph this? Can you autograph that? It can get annoying for sure. And this was the first time I dealt with that, right? So here we're at this dinner, and I think, I wasn't there long, and I'm seeing her face, her demeanor change. I'm seeing how irritated she's getting with every person that came up to them. And I could sense the uncomfortability that she was bringing to our dinner, so it's like supposed to be a couple's dinner, and it's getting more tense and more uncomfortable. And I remember thinking, you know what? I don't want to be like that. I can't control if people are going to come and ask for autographs. I can't control that. I can't control the fact that when I was on a plane with my ex, people would interrupt and not even, I would be bypassed so many times just because he was the star. There could have been many times, if every time I let that get to me, I could have been a bitter person. I could have been irritated with what really comes with the territory. And so I made a choice with that. You know what? I'm not going to have that. If I can't control people, I can control one thing. I control me. I can control me. And so having that heart of forgiveness, with that, having the heart of forgiveness when it comes to family, when it comes to mother-in-law issues. And one episode, I'm waiting for the perfect guest for that. If you're in that world, if you didn't have mother-in-law issues, praise the Lord. But there are a lot of us that do. There's just the dynamics, which I completely understand, that come with the territory of being in, the pro sports world and having your mom who you love and who you want to pay back. But then now you have a wife. And so there's friction there. There's a lot of those stories. It was definitely hard in my situation. Again, I'm saying this compassionately. A lot of the friction happened because we didn't know each other, and because we got married so quick, there was this feeling that I was the gold digger. And so in that thought process, for sure, there were many, many hard situations, hard times. Yeah, it was definitely not easy. But to choose forgiveness helped me. It helped me. Like, I wasn't just being obedient. It helped me. It freed me. Even to the point, I look at life, I look at all the things that God does in our lives. There's always this experience helps the next one. And so when I talk about that first thing of, forgiving him when he almost cheated on me, forgiving fans, forgiving that environment and not being easily offended, forgiving his mom for that hard relationship, to even in this in this thing, when it came to my divorce, him walking away from me and our 8 children to join a cult, to have all these people that didn't know me talk bad about me. I mean, there's YouTube videos, there's all these different things, to have the person who's supposed to be one with me walk away and say all the things that he said and believe all the things that he believed. All those little points of forgiveness helped me to see, okay, this, of all violations or of all things, am I willing to still forgive? And the choice to forgive, I was motivated by knowing that my kids were either going to see mom play victim and be bitter, or mom, obey God, trust God, and lean on him and forgive. And that's what was a big motivator, was them. And so doing that and looking at all those other experiences and going, okay, has forgiveness served me well? Yes, it has. To know and to be able to go through something like that, something as crazy as that, because if I heard it from the outside, if I heard someone telling the story like this, I'm sure like my mouth would drop. It's just, that's been part of me. So sometimes I forget how crazy it is. And so to know that I made a choice to forgive, there's so much power in that. There's so much freedom in forgiveness. And there's so much that will change generationally, that if me having the choice to forgive and making that choice, that will be a legacy that I leave for my kids. So again, that third playbook strategy, my undercover power, is forgiveness. Playbook strategy number 4, I say. I've talked about this a lot, so probably, especially I like to say that. I think that my solo ones, I try to keep them shorter for you guys, I understand. But then if I go long, hopefully you're doing this, you're multitasking and listening to something or doing something else while you're listening to this. So playbook strategy number 4 is called I say. I've talked about this before. I've talked about the power of your words. I've talked about the power of the tongue, on how when you say things, the thalamus in your brain, it hears your words and starts believing it. So there's something about the tongue. God says that. He says that life and death are in the power of the tongue. So I had a chapter, again, you said, talking about the things that God says, and how we hold him to his word. But there's also such importance on the things that we say. And so, this whole thing of like I say, we say, in this chapter, I talk about different things in regards to what I say. So the first thing I talk about in the book is having a heart of thanksgiving. And again, it goes in along the lines of shutting up and praying. And when I say that, it's not just for your spouse. It's for sure, like when when you want to say something to your kids, when you want to nag or whatever the situation is, instead of complaining, instead of talking to someone else, it's you going to the Lord instead of opening your mouth and saying and spewing all these things. So I tell my kids a lot that, when they're sick and they'll go, "Oh, Mom, I don't feel well. And, this hurts and that hurts. And, or, oh, I'm afraid of this." The whole thing of this truth that we don't fight against flesh and blood, but principalities and powers, that this is a part of it. I call it a playbook strategy. I call it a spiritual weapon warfare. It is something that we totally have to remember, that, the enemy, the devil, he can't read our minds. He's not like God. God is omniscient, meaning he's all knowing. Satan is not all knowing. And so he has to really, him and his, demons, they have to really listen in on what we say, because they know how to fight us with our words. So not only do we have the power to speak life and death, our words are like, let's put it this way. It's like, when you think of a coach on the field and he's given plays, he's doing this, right? He doesn't want the enemy. He doesn't want anybody to know. I think that's why he does that. He doesn't want people to know what he's doing or what strategy they're going to come with. It's the same thing with us. It's like, okay, we can't give ourselves away, because when we talk about, oh, I don't feel good, or when we talk about, to an extent, like, I'm not saying don't say anything, but to be mindful of our words and how they can be, in a sense, used against us or used to come against us, is something that we need to take into heart. So, I'll say this to my kids, like, hey, I know how you feel. You just told me, you know how you feel. God knows how you feel. Instead of going, oh, I don't feel good. Thank you, God, that I'm healed. It's praying the opposite of what you see. It's thanking God for what you may not see yet. It says something hope for. It's like, it's what you don't see yet. It's like having faith in what you don't see yet and thanking God for it, even when it's not there. And so being thankful, saying thank you, God, in advance. Thank you, Lord, for all that you have in store for me with my work, with the women that you're going to put in my path. Thank you for all that you have for us. Thank you for doing, again, and applying his word. Thank you for doing exceedingly and abundantly more than I've asked or imagined. So the whole understanding of how our words are important and what we say is just as important as this whole concept of holding God to his word. And so again, speaking life, and knowing that we can curse with our words. We can say things to ourselves that are, especially a mom. I was guilty before. I definitely don't do it anymore because I understand it. Is I would say, oh my gosh, I'm such a bad mom, or oh, I suck at this, or oh, I'm blah, I'm fat, whatever. All those things, those are not words that lift us up. Those aren't words that help us. They hurt us. And it's really almost like they can be used prophetically to put us in the wrong direction. So it's words I say to myself. It's words I speak to other people. So it's not just, strategy against the devil. It is lifting me up. It is speaking life into those around me, speaking life into my husband, thanking him for the good things that he does, not focusing on the yucky things that I don't care for. It's the same thing with my kids. It's encouraging them. I've talked about this before. I've talked about with my youngest, like I say, you're the best, Joseph, I will speak life into him. And I see how much good fruit is there from speaking life into him. So yeah, what I say to myself, what I say to others, and what I say about the word of God. So all those things are super important. Our words are super important, and to speak life, because the power of life and death is in the tongue. To speak and to watch your words and to be mindful and to have a forward thinking or a mentality and words of thankfulness and gratitude and future minded, in a sense of, just again, that whole thing of, I may not see it now, but thank you for it. Those are huge. This playbook strategy, this weapon of warfare, that's huge. It can come also in the form of worship. For me, sometimes if I don't know what to say, or if I'm feeling down, just putting on good worship music allows me to just because you're singing along, it starts building me up. It starts lifting me up, even though I may not have started out with that attitude. It may have been sad. And, when I start singing, I'm saying it, or I'm singing it, my brain hears it. It's an act of worship. It's prayer. There's part prophetic in there. And so there's only good when you speak life and you speak God's word. And then lastly, and this is what I'm very much pushing when I'm talking about the coaching space, when I'm talking about the safe outlet for these women in the NFL. I call it, in the Sidelined No More book, I call it the huddle. So if you see how important it is that they have timeouts, for the team to regroup, to take a breath, to go, okay, what mistakes do we make? How can we fix it? What adjustments do we need to make? That's how life is supposed to be with one another. I talk about, and I've had her on the show. I had a guest, Heidi, and she was such a dear friend. We hit it off so well. And we just clicked. But when her husband got cut, I just felt like I don't want to go through that again. I don't want to put myself out there again. I don't want to be that transparent and real with someone, and then they're taken away from me. And in doing that, I hurt myself. And so, that was like part of, just realizing, hey, what, she may not be there, but I have others. And thank God that through that friendship, it's still solid now. And so when I talk about better together, I know for me, when I was going through my stuff, I didn't have anybody to turn to. People outside of NFL, there was only a few that knew what was going on. And it took a couple of years for me to open up to them. So if you can imagine just a couple of years of holding it all together, of people not knowing how hard it was for me to be hearing that I wasn't submissive, that I wasn't, that I was rebellious, that just all those things that, that I just heard, I kept it to myself. I didn't know who to share it with. I was actually leading and facilitating this program called Life Skills. And so it was okay, how can I even let people in when I'm supposed to be the one leading? And so the lies of what I heard, the lies of you can't tell anybody, no one's going to understand, the lies of you're supposed to keep it all together because you're the one that's, teaching and facilitating and leading others, those were all lies that kept me quiet. And it wasn't until I started opening my mouth and letting people in that healing began. And it literally talks about the end of the scriptures. It says, confess your sins to one another. And it's not just sins like your bad things. It's confessing, your life, confessing things that are going on, confide in someone, that when you do that, then healing will happen. It also says that, we're to bear each other's burdens. So how can a friend bear my burden if they don't know it? And so in this chapter, I talk about the importance of doing life together, of sharing, of letting someone in, letting more than one person in, because it gives you a reality check. It allows you to see all those things that you may have been telling yourself, or all the things that you've been hearing. Someone can say, wait, that's not right. Hold on here. And so they're a pair of eyes that may see what you don't, and a mindset that is different from one that, for me, my mindset had changed, and I was going through a lot of junk that I couldn't really see straight. And so to let someone in to do life with people, there's such a difference. I am so thankful that as this book is getting out more than ever, especially, it's one thing hearing about Sidelined No More getting into the hands of my friends. And, I know that there's that partial, you like the book because you like me, and at the same time, them going, whoa, that's profound. But there were some things that they couldn't, it was oh my gosh, I never saw NFL or pro-life like that. It was different from their perspective versus this book getting into the hands of the women that are in it, where they say to me, oh my gosh, you're putting into words what I could never express. You're saying things, and you're bringing to light the things that I could never talk about to anybody. And so to hear that, to know that I'm giving voice to them, and to know that I'm encouraging them, for them to not feel crazy or alone like I did when I was going through my stuff, for me to create that outlet for these pro athlete wives, I'm honored, and I'm excited, and I'm looking forward to connecting more with these women. Every time I've talked to one, it is such a joy for me to hear them say, oh my gosh, I've so needed this. I haven't been able to share this with other people. There are people that just didn't quite understand. That is, if this is just me doing this now, and I have one-on-one conversations where these women can finally open up and be free to be themselves, or feel okay, someone understands me. If I'm one person that can bring that, and then I can encourage and strengthen someone else for her to be that for another person, when this spreads, cool. That's what I want, because we are better together. Everything we all, not even just in pro sports, we all need community. We all need like-minded people who are going to encourage, not just a group to complain in. And that's definitely not what I want. I want so badly to help these wives be proactive, to avoid divorce, to avoid, not having boundaries, and to avoid financial loss, to be able to avoid stresses and addictions that I know I had to go through, because again, not having purpose, and, just kind of feeling okay, I need to play the part. I need to have this pretty face and be the trophy wife and have this facade. It definitely brought stresses and problems that, if I had my mind right, and if I had someone who was ahead of me that said, hey, Eileen, this is what you're going to run into. These are the issues that may come along. Let me help you to be proactive. That's my heart. That's what I want to do. That's what I'm doing as I'm getting into this coaching space. That's what I'm doing on this podcast, not just for pro athlete wives, but for women to have a safe space to create, even in their cities, even their communities, to create outlets where it's like, okay, let's be real. Let's go through our stuff. Let's share my struggles and where I may think I'm disqualified. For example, when I was divorced, when I went through divorce, I honestly felt like, dang, all that I want to do for God, I can't do anymore. And that is such a lie of the devil. Like, God does work all things out for the good of those who love him and who are called according to his purpose. And one thing I do know is that I have loved him and I choose to love him. And I wouldn't choose any other way. So I hope this helps you. Again, the 5 playbook strategies, the 5 spiritual weapons of warfare. Number 1, last week I went into the whole thing, holding God to his promises. You said. Number 2, which I'm going to be really more mindful of, is shutting up and praying. Number 3, your undercover power of forgiveness. Number 4, your words, the things I say are super important. The things that you say are super important. That's why when I talk about Lady Bellator, I talk about the sword, which are the prayers. So that's more the you said parts. It's holding God to his promises, praying his promises. And then the scepter piece, which is in the front of her. Those are the declarations. Those are the I says. And then the last one, which I'm encouraging to connect with me, hello@ladybellator.com, like, comment, subscribe to the Unsidelined Life. Just let me know that you're hearing, that this is resonating, so that we can get our huddle, so that we can be number 5, better together. All right. Looking forward to the episodes to come, but I hope this blesses you and have a good week. Bye.
Until next time, love well, celebrate your strength, and discover the new things you are capable of. You are a light in the lives of those around you, and no night is too dark for you to find your way.